When Naruto fans start discussing which character is the strongest, things tend to get heated very quickly, and as we all know in the world of Naruto, being the strongest doesn't necessarily guarantee that you will always come out on top. There are oftentimes other factors that can determine the outcome of a battle, even with a gap of power with some characters being super high. All it takes is the right set of circumstances and a win can be secured, which that brings me to the combatants of today's newest Naruto Explained Versus video, which is going to be Itachi Uchiha versus Hiruzen Sarutobi, the third Hokage. For this video, we're going to be going in depth with an honest look at Itachi versus Hiruzen, laying out their powers and the weapons and the different versions of the characters in order to see who would come out on top. What makes both of these characters so interesting for a matchup is that they are a very clear example of two characters who have been progressively upscaled as time has passed by in the series. When we first see them in combat in Naruto Part 1 versus where we see them in the War Arc of Naruto, it's night and day because there's a very clear gap in power before each of these characters. Then when you start factoring in the legendary versions of the characters like Prime Hiruzen and Healthy Itachi, the heights at which you can start highballing these characters, they grow astronomically, which is part of what makes this matchup so fun regardless of the versions of the characters that you start pitting each other against. And the other reason being these two guys arguably have the deepest bags of ninjutsu in the series. Not the deepest bags of jutsu, but they do know so many jutsu and techniques that it should be illegal. And in the case of Itachi, due to how the Sharingan works, Itachi's got several cheat codes. Now let's start things off with the third Hokage and walk through all the different versions of the character, highlighting the strength and weaknesses and the progression of battle skill before we do the same for Itachi, and then we match them up by pairing them in hypothetical battles. He's one of the two characters in the series who's been given the nickname of a God of Shinobi, with the other character being Hashirama Senju, the first Hokage. He's also been given the nickname the Professor because of the extensive knowledge of ninjutsu and knowledge of ninjutsu that I would argue is unrivaled when compared to non-six pass characters. A perfect example being how he was able to look at the truth-seeking orbs and break down their function and chakra type and mechanics just by seeing them used. He's also one of the few shinobi in history of the Naruto franchise who have mastered all 5 changes in chakra nature through natural methods, so he doesn't need aids like the Rinnegan, which gives the user all 5 chakra natures when they unlock it, or someone who has 6 pass power by being the Jinchuriki of the 9 Biju. The reason why there are so few shinobi who have mastered all 5 chakra natures, it comes down to the fact that most shinobi, once they've hit a Jonin level and they've mastered the 2 chakra natures that are expected of a Jonin, they typically don't add more chakra natures, but instead choose to refine their skill in their primary chakra nature and their secondary chakra nature, because it's better to be a master at 2 things versus being very passable at doing several things. As someone who grew up in the later years of the Warring States era and the early days of Konoha, he's got the benefit of being directly trained by the first Hokage, Hashirama Senju, and the second Hokage, Tobirama Senju, and both of them quickly deemed Hiruzen to be a prodigy. In his early 20s, when he became the Hokage, he wasn't even in his prime yet, evident by the fact that when the Gold and Silver brothers were leading that hunt to hunt down Tobirama's team, Tobirama was the one who stayed behind to take them on so that Hiruzen could lead the team to escape. Had Hiruzen been in his prime in that moment, this would not have been an issue, since having that kind of a backup would have allowed Tobirama to live. So at least here, we know that Hiruzen at this point in the story would have either been at a Kage level of power or just outside that realm, given the Gold and Silver brothers, in my opinion, joined the sealed arm version of Orochimaru as being the bare minimum of what you can consider a Kage level shinobi. So this 21-year-old Hiruzen who just became Hokage would roughly be in the ballpark of being stronger than Haku, Zabuza, and Part 1 Kakashi, but being weaker than the aforementioned Gold and Silver brothers and sealed Orochimaru. At this point, not much is known about his skill with ninjutsu, only that he was deemed a prodigy by the first 2 Hokage. However, when we move into Prime Hiruzen, all of that changes, with Prime Hiruzen, in my opinion, being reached during the 20 years between the end of the first Ninja War and the start of the second Ninja War, where Hiruzen would already be in his early 40s. He was already the sensei to the legendary Sani, who at this point would be in their 20s. This Hiruzen would gradually begin to lose his strength over time, in the many years that exist since the start of the Second Ninja War and the ending of the Third Ninja War, where Hiruzen will be on a very noticeable decline based on the information we have. Prime Hiruzen is a character most people, they refuse to scale him because of how broken he is if we go off of all the official statements we have made on him. For starters, keeping with the tradition of the Hokage is always the strongest of the 5 Kage for the generation, which by this point in time, that would mean the 3rd Raikage who fought the 8 Tails and the 3rd Kazekage, the one that Sasori killed, and Old Man Onoiki. Hiruzen automatically goes over all of them, but we're also told in Naruto's manga, during the peak of his power, Hiruzen in his prime was stronger than any Hokage before or after him, which means that as of that statement being made, Prime Hiruzen would go above the 4th Hokage Minato, who fought Obito, Tobirama, who fought the Gold and Silver Brothers, and Hashirama, who fought against EMS Madara and the 9 Tails simultaneously. This Hiruzen is also said to be so great that he earned the nicknames of being both the God of Shinobi, taking that title from Hashirama, and being the last person ever to have that title, and being called the Professor. It was stated that this version of Hiruzen was the de facto example of what a shinobi could be. He not only was able to completely master all of the ninja arts and combat styles, from ninjutsu to taijutsu, genjutsu, but his understanding of chakra and ninjutsu was on a different level, being stated to have mastered every single technique that existed in Konoha that was not a Kekkei Genkai, which is for obvious reasons. Kekkei Genkai, like the Sharingan and Byakugan, they're things you gotta be born with in order to use, but Hiruzen, however, did learn how to perform hidden jutsu of clans when we go by that statement, which are hidden jutsu, not Kekkei Genkai. These are jutsu that get passed down by the clan elder to younger clan members. Outsiders can learn how to perform the jutsu under 2 direct circumstances, one of them being that someone from the clan teaches them, which has only happened once with Shikamaru in the Boruto era, teaching Temari the mechanics of the Shadow Possession Jutsu so that he could assist Shikamaru in their training of their son. And the other method is you see the jutsu being performed enough times that you figure out how to use it, which we saw Neji do when he taught himself the hidden jutsu of the Hyuga clan by seeing them perform the gentle fist fighting style and the rotations, and he replicated those movements until he mastered it. I don't think it's crazy to say that this Hiruzen is capable of doing exactly what Neji did, because once again, he was able to see the true seeking orbs and figure out how they work, what they were, how they were made, and he did so before any of the other Kage could put 2 and 2 together. Hashirama, Minato, and Tobirama are all geniuses. Hiruzen was just that guy. His intellect, it is on a different level. So this means that Hiruzen knew how to perform the Shadow Possession Jutsu, the Mind Transfer Jutsu, the Mind Transmission Jutsu, the Expansion Jutsu, and he knew the movements of the Gentle Fist fighting style, but he just couldn't target the chakra points because, he doesn't have a Byakugan. This Hiruzen also went on to master all 5 changes in chakra nature and form his summoning contract with Monkey King Enma, who is directly scaled as being as strong as whatever version of Hiruzen summons him. He possesses the ability to deduce the techniques that a person is using just by seeing the hand seals that they're using at the time, and his knowledge base of ninjutsu allows him to know what the jutsu is before it's even finished, albeit his knowledge of ninjutsu and his eye speed allowed him to break down jutsu, much like how the Sharingan Eye of Insight allows to use or break down the chakra nature of attacks, like how Kakashi did with Kakuzu's Earth Release Jutsu, and how Kakashi predicted Zabuza's Water Dragon Jutsu before it was finished. His mastery of jutsu is on such a level that he didn't just know the basics of how to perform the jutsu, he could perform every jutsu that he learned to their near maximum output, and he possessed perfect chakra control, only using just enough chakra that was required for the jutsu and not wasting any chakra. This version of Hiruzen, due to his knowledge base, was able to make counter strategies on the fly, on the spot, and able to be self-prepared with intel before going into the fight with someone. It's for all these reasons, it makes complete sense that he was able to take the mantle of the God of Shinobi from Hashirama. Moving on to 56-year-old Hiruzen, the Hiruzen who had left his prime now and he had stepped down as Hokage so that Minato could lead the village. This Hiruzen was still incredibly powerful. He was strong enough that in the manga, he led the charge against the rampaging Nine Tails and was able to push the Nine Tails out the village with this attack. This same Hiruzen was stated by Orochimaru to have been so strong that had 56-year-old Hiruzen, who was a few months away from turning 57, had this Hiruzen been the one who fought Orochimaru in the Konoha Crush arc, there was no way in hell Orochimaru would be able to win, with them saying that had Hiruzen been 10 years younger, he would have killed him. So this would have been Hiruzen Hiruzen 12 years younger, going by Orochimaru's statement, so the same thing still applies. That automatically puts this near 57-year-old Hiruzen above Part 1 Orochimaru, the Orochimaru who had his arm seals, above Sage Mode Jiraiya, and also above Four Tails Naruto, who fought Orochimaru, who didn't have all his jutsu. When we jump ahead to 69-year-old Hiruzen, which is old man Third Hokage who died in Part 1 of Naruto, despite his advanced age, we're told that he is still considered to be the strongest of the 5 Kage during that time, according to Kabuto, which is never refuted. This puts him above the 4th Raikage A, above Perfect Jinchuriki Yagra, Rasa, the 4th Kazekage, and Onoiki. This version of Hiruzen was cursed with falling victim to Father Time, someone that no one ever defeats. His stamina was absolutely terrible, and the only thing that truly kept him in the fight with Orochimaru for as long as he was is that despite his poor stamina, he still maintained perfect chakra control, and even then he still possessed a pretty substantial amount of chakra, being able to mold chakra that's so dense that it is shown cracking stone in chapter 117 of the manga. While he could make shadow clones, Hiruzen was at a severe downside to the effects of shadow clones, which is when you make the clones, you split your chakra evenly, and thus by doing so, when the clones are dispersed, the stamina of the clones, it suffered and it is transferred back to the original body. Hence why Orochimaru said, hey, you're shortening your lifespan. This old man Hiruzen used his perfect chakra control and his knowledge to combat not only and fight a much younger Orochimaru, but he was also able to pressure him at times with his craftiness and how he performed his jutsu, like when how he used the Earth Release jutsu to make a dragon, which could then shoot out small balls of Earth Release, which he would follow up simultaneously with Fire Release. He would be shooting shuriken out, he would be shooting out tiles from the ground. He was very crafty in how he fought Orochimaru, on top of holding his own against Orochimaru during the various forms of combat. When Orochimaru summoned the Edo Tensei versions of Hashirama and Tobirama, Hiruzen was still able to hold his own against him in battle, despite it now being a 3 versus 1 against 3 high-level Kage tier shinobi. His reaction time during this version of his character is often downplayed by fans, with him being shown being able to react to and block attacks despite being blinded, and crafty enough to laden attacks with explosive tags before his enemy can pick up on it. Even in his old age, his shuriken jutsu, it was top tier, with him being able to use the shadow clone shuriken jutsu, a high level A rank jutsu that Hiruzen created, which makes a large volley of duplicate shadow clones, which allows him to attack from every direction. And fun fact, in the manga version of the story, this jutsu, it appears instantaneous when you use it, making it harder to avoid. In the anime, when you compare it, the anime literally nerfs the attack. He can also choose to fight alongside Monkey King Enma, who transforms into that giant staff, but when Hiruzen swings it around, it does take a hit on his stamina. He also has mastered one of the Uzumaki clan's signature sealing jutsu, the Reaper Death Seal, and he was smart enough to use shadow clones to allow him to seal multiple targets when using that jutsu. What's even crazier here, which is the anime version of Hiruzen, if we go by what we saw in the anime, 69-year-old Hiruzen is potentially implied to be stronger than 50-year-old Orochimaru. I disagree, but I will say this much. In the anime version, Orochimaru, as he's screaming at Hiruzen is shown picturing Orochimaru as a small child. I bring this up because it is significant. This scene was never in Naruto Volume 16. Hiruzen in the manga is never shown thinking of Orochimaru as a small child before he dies. In the manga, he is shown seeing Orochimaru exactly as he is, and it's implied he was fighting him seriously. If we factor in the anime version of the story, this means the entire time Hiruzen was fighting, he was picturing Orochimaru as a small child, meaning he had a mental nerf the whole fight. And mental nerfs, they cannot be understatement. They are a real thing, evident with how KCM Minato looked like an absolute ghoul during the 4th Ninja War, but then had this monster stat decrease when he realized that Obito was the masked man from 16 years ago who was responsible for Kushina dying. The reason mental nerfs are so drastic is that chakra is made up of 2 components, yang energy, which is physical energy, and yin energy, which is the combination of mental energy. So think about your emotions and spiritual energy. So when the mind is that shattered, you're basically operating without your full tank of chakra on the yin side, so everything is thrown off balance. That being said, I do think it is worth noting when you factor in the data books, it is revealed, the second data book, that Orochimaru, despite everything that happened, not at full power when he fought Hiruzen and was playing around with them. Hiruzen himself in the manga is also not sure he can defeat Orochimaru, as are several other characters, where they're openly saying saying, if only Minato was alive. The data books, they're canon to the manga, so if you want to throw out the anime only scene since it does contradict the manga, then absolutely feel free. But as always, I do lay out both sides of the info for you guys to digest and make of it what you will. So obviously with Edo Tensei Hiruzen, we have Hiruzen who's brought back to life at the time of his death, and this version of Hiruzen, he doesn't have the stamina disadvantages due to how Edo Tensei works. This version of Hiruzen has impressive feats, being able to maintain 5 shadow clones and combat the wood statue of Spiral Zetsu, being able to make 5 simultaneous change in chakra nature jutsu to push back the attack. He's able to split apart branches of the god tree with his staff. He has perfect chakra control, and the lack of stamina allowed him to play key participation in the battle against the Ten Tails main body by helping with that huge Kage level barrier jutsu which contained it, and then later on his craftiness allowed him to survive the battle against Jubi Obito. Though depending on how you want to describe survive, that's up to you. So with Hiruzen out of the way, let's move on to Itachi, and this is where it gets interesting, and then we'll break down the battle itself. Itachi, he is a very tragic case of a character dying way too young because he never got to reach his full potential. And as we'll see as we go through the various versions of Itachi, Itachi was growing up at a very rapid rate in his short 21 years of life, which will reference Itachi died younger than Minato, who died at the age of 24. Itachi was a master of 3 changes in chakra nature, being a master of fire release as expected of an Uchiha, water release, and wind release. And his chakra nature mastery, it is interesting because it directly fits his personality. So his chakra natures that he chose to master, they are very methodical. Water release is stronger than fire release, and wind release makes fire release stronger, and wind release can also be applied to water release in order to speed up the attacks in order to make them flow a lot faster. In short, he chose to master the weakness to his dominant chakra nature and then learn a chakra nature that can strengthen both chakra natures he uses. Effectively, he shores up his weaknesses while simultaneously building on his strengths. It's for that reason I don't think it's a stretch to say that he would have been one of the few shinobi to master all 5 chakra natures through natural means, which reminder, the Sharingan cannot copy jutsu that the user has not mastered a chakra nature for. So the version of Itachi that we're going to use first is going to be Genin Itachi, then we'll move on to Anbu Itachi, then Healthy Itachi, Sick Itachi, and then Edo Itachi, since the power levels for each, they fluctuate in major ways, if we're being honest here. With Genin Itachi, he's 7 years old and he's already stronger than some of the Jonin in the village at this point, and as Hiruzen tells us in the manga, he's already in possession of the wisdom of a Kage and a young prodigy. But how big of a prodigy is he? Well, during the Nine Tails attack, in a scene from the Itachi Shinin Book of Daylight, which the anime never adapted this scene, during the Nine Tails attack, Itachi, who was 5 years old at this point, he sees debris flying from the destruction that the Nine Tails is causing. He sees the Jonin standing around acting scared like crazy, and he's wondering why aren't they doing anything before it crushes the villagers. Itachi is shown molding his chakra, speed blitzing the debris, and punching it with enough force that it breaks into small enough pieces that it doesn't hurt the villagers. And the Jonin who see this, they are shocked because 5-year-old Itachi shows better chakra control than all the Jonin in the area, and it's because he is literally doing what Tsunade and Sakura do, which is they use that superhuman strength which is caused by releasing chakra at the point of impact by using perfect chakra control. Itachi was only able to do this because while the other kids in the village were watching Baby Shark on TV, Fugaku was literally taking Itachi onto the battlefield at the age of 4 to give him experience as a ninja, and he was harshly training him day in and day out over the course of the next year. This moment here not only put Itachi on Danzo's radar, who would spy on Itachi while he was in the Ninja Academy, but after he graduated from the academy after only 1 year, Orochimaru would see Itachi training, think that the training exercise he saw Itachi do with all these arrows and spikes being shot off, they were too dangerous for even someone like Orochimaru. In that anime only scene when Orochimaru is reflecting on not taking Itachi's body, Itachi in that flashback is shown avoiding all those attacks with a single leap, which is why Orochimaru chose Itachi as a future target for his living corpse jutsu. This Itachi is so insanely skilled that he not only saved his sensei on numerous missions, but his sensei was also so jealous that he was purposely not putting Itachi's team forward for Chunin in a rare moment of agreement. In the Itachi Itachi's Shinden story of daylight, it reveals that both Fugaku and Danzo petitioned the third Hokage to allow Itachi to take the Chunin exams alone, since by this point Obito had already killed Itachi's teammate Tenma, and Shinko, the girl that was on that team, she retired as a shinobi working at that tea shop that Itachi visits when he comes back to the village with Kisame, and it's because she was traumatized by this moment. So Itachi was on a brand new team with fresh from the academy graduates, and he was wasting his talent. Hence, Fugaku and Danzo stepped in. So Fugaku not only signs a disclaimer to not hold the village accountable if anything happens to Itachi, and Itachi, he just goes into beast mode in the Chunin exams in scenes you didn't see the anime adapt. So first of all, he scores the highest written exam score on the Chunin exams history in the exams, coming in only behind Minato, which immediately put Itachi on Danzo's radar even further. People at this point were already saying this kid might have potential to be Hokage one day. In the Forest of Death, Danzo was so interested in Itachi that he was in the Forest of Death, personally monitoring Itachi, watching as the kid was so far ahead of all the other kids from the ninja villages that even after he gathered the scrolls that were needed, he was wasting time seeking out other teams, battling them in handicap matches because Itachi refused to believe that gaining from other ninja villages who were taking the Chunin exams were this weak compared to him, because Itachi had it in his head that all shinobi who were worth their salt were as strong as his father. And after gathering multiple scrolls, he goes to the tower and he sets the record for the Forest of Death, and that record remains unbroken until Gar and Tamari and Kankuro would be shown beating it in Naruto Part 1. So that record stood for a solid 5 years. During the final rounds, he not only wins the tournament, but in all the fights that he has, he showcases so much skill with genjutsu that even for an Uchiha, he was stated to be at a completely different level, where even though he's playing around with other shinobi in the final rounds, he's winning the fight without any difficulty. Oftentimes, nobody lands a hit on him. This is what eventually makes Danzo approach Hiruzen to have Itachi join the Anbu Black Ops, and this brings us to Anbu Itachi. Now, Anbu Itachi is very tricky because of the nature of it. So, in Naruto Part 1, we learned that Itachi, he became the captain of the Anbu at age 13, but it should be worth noting that we learn in the Itachi story of Midnight that the Anbu Black Ops, they have an age requirement to join. So, the age itself is 13. Itachi was 12 at the time. Hiruzen only agrees to allow Itachi to join the Anbu if they publicly bump Itachi's age up by 1 year. So Itachi was actually 12 when he joined the Anbu, and he eventually massacres the Uchiha clan, and he takes the spot of Kakashi as Anbu captain. This is also backed up by the fact that the official Naruto databooks has Itachi's age as being 5 years older than Sasuke, and Sasuke in Naruto Part 1 for the majority of Part 1 is 12 years old. This Itachi is already one of the 3 strongest Uchiha in the village, falling behind Shisui and Fugaku, with both of them having the Mangekyo. However, it's through daily sparring matches with Shisui that Itachi is able to match the power and skill of Shisui when they fight 3 Tomo Sharingan and 3 Tomo Sharingan, and Itachi is even able to best 3 Tomo Sharingan Shisui in the fight before Shisui died, according to the Book of Midnight story. When Itachi then unlocks his Mangekyo Sharingan, we learn in that same story that despite the Mangekyo, Itachi still has doubts about his power, and Itachi further builds on that in episode 455 of the anime, where Itachi reveals that despite having the Mangekyo Sharingan, he calls his father Fugaku the worst possible matchup for him, and he's not sure he can defeat him in combat, which lines up with Shisui saying in the Book of Midnight that Shisui was uncertain if he could defeat Fugaku, which is why he wanted to sneak attack him and use the genjutsu via Kotomasukami in order to avoid the fight altogether. Based on what we have here, based off of this information, this Anbu Itachi, he is Kage level, which that is understandable given Obito did invite him to join the Akatsuki, and the Akatsuki are all a group of S-rank shinobi of a Kage tier or higher. In terms of ranking, I don't put this Itachi at the bare minimum of power of Kage level. He's well above that. So he's well above the Gold and Silver brothers and Orochimaru with no arms. This version of Itachi would fall a lot closer to the Sasuke Sasuke, who had Orochimaru absorbed and the 3-Tomo Sharingan, but he would be slightly stronger than 3-Tomo Sharingan Akatsuki Robe Sasuke and Mangekyo Sharingan Sasuke and the Akatsuki Robes who fought Killer Bee, because that Sasuke no longer has Orochimaru absorbed or the 10 times multiplier of the curse mark. We now move on to Healthy Itachi, and this Itachi is a monster. We can peg down the years they count for Healthy Itachi just based off of all the supplemental materials. So the guidebooks, which have Itachi as age 17 during the Land of Waves arc and the Chunin exams arc of Naruto Part 1, at 18 years old during Data Book 2, which covers the Search of Tsunade arc all the way until the end of Naruto Part 1. We can also piece it together by looking into the information from the Naruto epilogue story, Akatsuki Hiden, Evil Flowers in Full Bloom, and the Naruto side story, Naruto Jinraiden, The Day That the Wolf Howled, because we have a timeline in the latter for when Itachi began taking medicines for his illnesses that robbed him of his stamina. Both of these stories were never animated in the anime. Itachi started taking those drugs 1 year before he showed up in Konoha, so Healthy Itachi would have been during the years of 13 years old to 17 years old. For this portion of the video, we have to by default look at all the feats of Sick Itachi and Edo Itachi in order to paint the full picture of how strong Healthy Itachi is. So we'll be upscaling Healthy Itachi based on the performance of both of these versions. So the Healthy Itachi is the Itachi who is already in possession of the Mangekyo Sharingan. He has access to the spiritual weapons known as the Yata Mirror, which can reflect all change in Chakra Nature's attack, the Tosca Blade, which can seal away any target in a Genjutsu, and the Yasaka Magatama beads, which can be shot off as projectiles. This Itachi, despite his young age, was able to one-shot Orochimaru with Genjutsu, regular Sharingan Genjutsu, and no Mangekyo, that was so intense that Orochimaru, after realizing that he was in a Genjutsu, he couldn't break it through normal methods by disrupting his chakra, but instead he had to override his body's nervous system by slicing off his hand to make pain that was so intense it required him to cut off his hand. That's how broken the Uchiha clan's Sharingan Genjutsu is when it's used by a true Uchiha. This Itachi does not have the stamina issues that he would later have later on in the series, with it being revealed that in the Itachi Shinin of Midnight that Itachi uses Tsukuyomi 5 separate times, from Itachi's lover Izumi to the closest aides of Fugaku who confronted him for Shisui's death, and he uses it on Sasuke in that same story, and he still has no signs of physical exhaustion, which for comparison, in Naruto Part 1, just using Tsukuyomi and Amaterasu was enough to put Itachi with clear signs of exhaustion, and Kisame has to warn him not to push himself. In fact, the whole time in the arc, just 3 uses of the Mangekyo in a short period of time, it took a pretty significant and obvious hit on Itachi's stamina. Itachi, this version, he also cleanly scales over Kisame. In the Akatsuki Hiden Evil Flowers in Full Bloom story, which was again never adapted into the anime, Kisame and Itachi were in the jump by a large group of Mist Village Anbu that are out to collect the bounty on Kisame. After the shinobi managed to overwhelm Kisame by trapping him with a complex lightning release jutsu, and they managed to poison Kisame, Itachi steps into the fight from the sidelines, and he easily takes out several of these ninja, at one point placing them under Tsukuyomi, killing one of them, and was in the process of killing another guy by making the guy drown himself repeatedly in a giant lake of mud inside of that Genjutsu for 72 hours before the Genjutsu was finally released. Itachi's skill set by default, it can be elevated when you look at sick Itachi's skills and you raise them up. For instance, Itachi, when he was sick, he fought against Kakashi. That Itachi was making hand signs so fast that Kakashi with his 3-Tomo Sharingan was not able to track them, and he only realized that Itachi had weave hands for a jutsu until after the hand seals were formed and the jutsu was used. With Itachi in that span that it took him to draw shuriken out of his cloak was making one-handed hand seals so fast that by the time Kakashi was able to barely use the water wall jutsu under the belief that he was going to block a shuriken jutsu that Itachi had drawn, instead the guy had already made seals for the water release water fang bullet jutsu that struck Kakashi's water wall, with Kakashi being shocked by the speed. And during the same time period, Itachi had already made the signs for a shadow clone jutsu that was not only produced, but the real Itachi managed to move so fast as the jutsu was made that Kurenai and Asuma didn't see him moving at all, leading to Kurenai to literally describe the sick Itachi as being a superhuman being. This same Itachi was able to detonate his shadow clone in the span of only a few seconds, leading to Kakashi to outright state this Itachi hadn't even shown his true strength yet. But Kakashi was already at this point very close to catching his breath, and he's sweating from exhaustion. This is even more impressive when you realize that Sick Itachi's Water Fang Bullet Jutsu is just one of the few jutsu in the entirety of the 4 Naruto databooks that are stated to move at light speed. Had Kakashi not been preemptively using water release, thinking he was going to block a shuriken attack, and even with Itachi severely holding back because he was not trying to kill so he wouldn't blow his cover, Itachi could have skewered Kakashi before Kakashi even realized what happened. So you can take all of that and you can upscale healthy Itachi since there's no stamina issue here. So there's more chakra that he doesn't have to set aside for stamina, which means that all that chakra, it goes back into his main chakra pool, and it can be used to amp his speed and his strength or his ninjutsu, since Itachi has perfect chakra control and mastery of several Uchiha clan hidden jutsu, as well as knowledge of the forbidden jutsu like the Izanagi and Izanami, one which allows the user to rewrite reality and the other allows the user to track the target inside of an infinite genjutsu loop. When you take further feats from Sick Itachi, you have the battle with Kakashi after the time skip, where a clone of Itachi that only possessed 30% of his overall chakra was enough to place Kakashi, who had spent the last 3 years training, on an absolute defensive, and had Kakashi tell Naruto he couldn't defeat this version of Itachi, again at 30% power, unless Naruto helped, and it required Naruto, who was already drawing on Kurama's chakra in the manga, evident by the Kurama slits in his eyes, and he had to use the giant Rasengan in order to take down Sick Itachi's clone at 30% power. That's absolutely insane. Again, you upscale Sick Itachi based off of all of this. This same Sick Itachi was also strong enough that in the Ninja Escapades OVA that the Naruto series creator Masashi Kishimoto wrote, the Sick Itachi was able to defeat Base Kisame in a fight, winning via genjutsu in order to secure the victory, showing that even with him being on his literal deathbed at this point, since this takes place right before he fights Sasuke, this Sick Itachi was that much further ahead of Base Kisame. During this fight with Sasuke, who had the power of Orochimaru Absorb and the 3-Tomo Sharingan and the 10 times multiplier when he uses the curse mark, despite all of this for Sasuke, Sick Itachi was still that much stronger than that version of Sasuke. This Itachi, despite being on his deathbed and literally at times seeing 3 versions of Sasuke, he was shown making hand signs so fast that Sasuke's 3-Tomo, it couldn't track the speed, and he didn't realize that Itachi had made a shadow clone until it was throwing a shuriken, which means that that whole shuriken battle that they had, Itachi somehow managed to weave the signs for a shadow clone jutsu. At that point, he kept it hidden in his shadow the whole time, and he managed to land the sneak attack on Sasuke that forced Sasuke to use Orochimaru's chakra to be able to block it. During the course of that entire battle, Zetsu, multiple times, he would call bullshit midway through the fight and basically say that, yeah, Sasuke's strong, but there ain't no way he's this strong, that Itachi should be having trouble here. Obito, upon reviewing all the fight footage that Zetsu records, he tells Sasuke in volume 43 of the manga, look dude, I don't care if Itachi is using his Mangekyo Sharingan to get you. If Itachi wanted to, he could have killed your ass several times in that fight. He let you win. In fact, Sasuke himself in the Naruto Jinraiden story has a moment of internal monologue where Sasuke, who has the Mangekyo Sharingan, so the version of Sasuke who is about to go fight Killer Bee, he admits to himself that despite the Mangekyo, he is still weaker than the Sick Itachi he just fought. And the official anime guidebook even goes further in backing up how much further ahead Itachi was in skill. So in the official anime guidebook, it says that the Sick Itachi in the Akatsuki, even without using his full power, so no Mangekyo Sharingan, no Amaterasu, he is more skilled at using fire release than any character shown in the series up to this point. So that would include Orange Mask Obito, heavy Sasuke with Orochimaru absorb, that would also include the third Hokage. That makes sense, just given that Fugaku was shocked at how big of a giant fireball jutsu that Itachi made when he was just 5 years old. This makes a lot of sense because, again, even though the Sarutobi clan is shown as having a strong affinity for fire release, the Uchiha are literally the clan that is associated with fire release, and Itachi has shown a more diverse range of fire release than Hiruzen, which means you can take all of that and again upscale healthy Itachi even further. Based off of this information for sick Itachi, we in my opinion can place sick Itachi above the 4th Raikage and Sasori and the 5 Kage Summit version of Sasuke with the Mangekyo who fought the 4th Raikage, but he will be below the full power of the Deva Path Pain who used the collective power of all 6 paths of pain in order to destroy Konoha. So you can take all those feats and you can apply them to Edo Itachi here as well, since Kabuto, his Edo Tensei, brought back those reanimated shinobi close to their full power. Now, it's not quantifiably stated how close to full power is close, so we don't know for certain, but we know it's pretty damn close to their peak of power. So we could argue, say 90% as a conservative number, but you can go all up to like 99.5 if you want to. That Edo Itachi is shown being able to keep up with the combat speed of KCM1 Naruto, and he's pulling out jutsu so fast that he literally has to tell Killer B as he's fighting him, hey man, I'm doing this jutsu, hey man, I'm standing right behind you. He's mixing in shuriken jutsu into his fire release before Killer B knows what's happening. While the knee-jerk reaction by a lot of people say, hey, Naruto wasn't going all out using KCM1, they were having a conversation. I'm gonna push back on that. I'm gonna say that when we look at the totality of Edo Itachi in the war, it backs up him being relative to what you see with that version of Naruto, especially when you factor in the fact that this version of Naruto was already giving Killer B warnings. Hey, if this guy lands Tsukiyomi or even Amaterasu, we are done. So allow me to explain even further. At the start of the fight, Kabuto takes over Itachi's body to force Itachi to fight at full power, but he leaves his personality intact, which is why they have the conversation in the first place. When Itachi shoots off his fire release, he's moving so fast that Naruto and Killer B, they don't even see that he's jumped into the air behind the fire release. Naruto's sensory ability didn't even pick it up at this point. That's why Nagato had to warn Naruto that, hey, Itachi's already in the air above you. Itachi is able to land more than one attack on Naruto in the manga when you read it, who was already actively moving to dodge the attacks and counterattack, and he dodged a blindsided attack by Killer B. He then proceeds to dodge Killer B's attacks, and he places him under Genjutsu before B even realizes what happened, despite Itachi telling him, hey, I'm about to put you under Genjutsu. So even with advanced warning, Killer B could not react. When we move over to the Kabuto battle, this Edo Itachi, when we look at it very closely, when Sasuke is pissed off, it's EMS Sasuke. Itachi more than once is able to knock away the Susanoo arm of that enraged Sasuke. In order to do something like that, he has to be somewhat relative to EMS Sasuke in order to knock away that attack. Doing it once is a fluke, he did it more than once. While Kabuto did kill Itachi several times in that fight, and people try to use that to downplay Itachi, I think you also have to say, hey, wait a second, that's disingenuous. You have to chalk that up more to Itachi knows the benefits of Edo Tensei the same way that Tobirama understood them, and he took advantage of it. So once you get your body destroyed, it gives you benefits to lay other jutsu to attack. There are times in that battle with Sage Mode Kabuto where Itachi is shown directly putting him on a defensive and forcing him to change tactics, and Itachi is more than once carrying Sasuke through that fight. This Itachi was able to block the attacks of Sage Mode Kabuto, use his Mangekyo Sharingan's advanced perception to predict his moves, which is important to take note of because precognition, it means nothing if you don't have the speed to react. I refer you to Rock Lee bullying Sasuke, who knew the attack was coming, but he couldn't react to it. Not only does this Itachi have the speed to react to Sage Mode Kabuto's attacks at times, but he is also able to outright tag him with water release from a distance with a water release dragon jutsu before Kabuto even has the time to fully think to himself the name of the attack. He goes, wait a second, is that the water release? And blam! He blows Kabuto backwards before he can react. While Edo Itachi is behind Sage Mode Kabuto in power, he was still slightly ahead of EMS Sasuke and Rinnegan Nagato in that power, which that is insane because this is Itachi with only a Mangekyo. Makes you wonder, what if he had EMS or what if he had the Rinnegan? If we go with the belief that Kabuto's Edo Tensei, which brought back Shinobi closer to their full power, and say we conservatively assume that this is 90% power, that is enough to say that healthy Itachi is above EMS Sasuke and below KCM 2 Naruto. So the ballpark average of full health version of Itachi would be equal to or maybe even slightly stronger than Sage Mode Kabuto, which again, that puts him weaker than KCM 2 Naruto and weaker than Rinnegan Obito, which explains why Obito was so threatened by Itachi's rapid growth, and he waited until Itachi got sick in order to start the Biju hunt. They never made the move when Itachi was healthy, because when you get to that point in the story, sick Itachi is no longer a threat. This is even crazier when you realize, again, Itachi died at the age of 21, so we never saw him reach his full potential. So now that we've broken down the characters, how exactly would a hypothetical one-on-one battle go against these characters? Say we just drop each of these versions into an alternate timeline and we just had them fight. It goes without saying that 21-year-old Hiruzen, who Tobirama named Hokage, he's beating up Gani and Itachi, but he's losing to Anbu Itachi, who massacred the Uchiha clan. This is mainly due to the fact that this version of Itachi had already been getting trained by Fugaku, a Genjutsu specialist, and Shisui, another Genjutsu specialist, and it's revealed to us in the Itachi Book of Midnight by Shisui that when someone has a Mangekyo Sharingan, their Genjutsu not only gets stronger in their base Sharingan, but also when they use the Mangekyo Sharingan Genjutsu gets even more hacks. In particular, the Sharingan Eye Hypnotism, which no longer needs direct eye contact in order to perform Sharingan Genjutsu. That's why Itachi is able to, during the Kazekage rescue arc, he's able to place Naruto under Genjutsu just by pointing his finger at him. And it is important to take note of that for the following reason. A lot of people like to point to Might Guy's method of fighting, saying, hey, he can just look at somebody's feet and he can fight them. So even if Hiruzen were to use that whole method where he's looking at Itachi's feet, it doesn't mean anything, because Itachi, his Genjutsu does not need to be visually casted in order to place someone under Genjutsu. And as the databook tells us, he can release chakra out of any part of his body, which his choice to do so is via the finger, but chakra can also be sent down to the feet. If he's looking at Itachi's feet, he's under the Genjutsu, because again, the Book of Midnight tells us as long as you release your chakra, you can use it to manipulate someone into the Genjutsu, and that's backed up by the manga and the data books. The other thing of note here is that Sharingan Genjutsu, even if it isn't being amped up by someone who has awakened the Mangekyo, it is more potent than normal Genjutsu, and that is backed up in the manga by Chiyo's warning when she says, when you fight someone who used Sharingan Genjutsu, your only choices there are to flee or to have a teammate who externally disrupts your chakra for you, and even then, that's not a guarantee. The Uchiha are built different. This is why when Orochimaru was under the demonic illusion shackle and stakes Genjutsu, which again is a basic Sharingan Genjutsu, Orochimaru has to cut his hand off in order to break the Genjutsu. He needed an external stimulus to break the pain to break free. That also lines up with what Chiyo says in the manga, which a lot of people overlook, where she says, quote, you can free your comrades by giving them a whack too, end quote. That further builds on what we saw. Advanced Sharingan Genjutsu, it requires an external force to break it when used by a Uchiha, because conventional methods, they do not work to break it. So you can't get caught under Sharingan Genjutsu by someone of the Uchiha clan and go, oh, I'm just gonna mold my chakra and break it. It does not work that way. Unless the Uchiha has some difficulties with the chakra control, it ain't happening. So Anbu Itachi takes the fight here. So that brings the scoreboard up to an even 1-for-1 for Hiruzen and Itachi. Prime Hiruzen, this is where he begins to start running the scoreboard up, since he scales over Hashirama and possesses the ability to read hand seals at a level that's comparable to the Sharingan, with Prime Hiruzen beating every version of Itachi that is left. So Anbu Itachi goes down, Healthy Itachi goes down, Sick Itachi goes down, and Edo Itachi goes down. The same is true for 57-year-old Hiruzen, who fought the Nine Tails and was strong enough that Orochimaru had no doubt in his mind that Hiruzen would have killed him. So again, it's a repeat. So that brings the scoreboard up to 9 versus 1 with Hiruzen in the lead. However, 69-year-old Hiruzen Hiruzen is where things get brought back down to size. 69-year-old Hiruzen does scale over Anbu Itachi, being stronger than him by a whole tier arguably. And I wouldn't even say arguably. I think that you can make a very solid argument that 69-year-old Hiruzen is that much stronger than Anbu Itachi, but the win conditions for Itachi, it comes down to can he place Hiruzen under Sharingan Genjutsu or even Tsukiyomi, which if he does, the latter will kill him, which we know since he's used it to kill before, and Kakashi flat out wonders in the Search of Tsunade arc, why didn't Itachi just kill him with the Genjutsu? I'm going to err on this side of caution just because Hiruzen is a whole tier above Itachi in power, so I'm going to make this a 10-1 at this point, but I am going to tell you there's a solid argument that this version of Itachi beats that version of Hiruzen. However, when we go to healthy Itachi, Itachi's the one who starts picking up a lot of points here and starts making the comeback. So healthy Itachi, who wasn't even at his full peak yet, was able to destroy very easily Orochimaru with basic Sharingan Genjutsu via the demonic illusion shackling stakes. That Orochimaru is stronger than 69-year-old Hiruzen if we go by the information from the data book and the statements in the manga that allude to the fact that Hiruzen's weaker than Orochimaru. Edo Hiruzen, he does have the plus of no stamina issues, but healthy Itachi dogs out Edo Hiruzen in the fight, and if worse comes to worse, Itachi has Tosca Blade, and given how Itachi is able to quickly break down jutsu, as we saw with Nagato, that fight is over pretty quickly, so he's still able to come out with the win here against Hiruzen since he's still that much stronger than Orochimaru. So this is now a 10 versus 5 matchup with Hiruzen still in the lead, but Itachi's catching up. So Edo Itachi, he would then repeat the whole process, bringing this to a 10 versus 7 edge. So here's the thing. It makes sense to say that when you add in Prime Hiruzen and 57-year-old Hiruzen, that Hiruzen beats most versions of Itachi, but when you take away Prime Hiruzen, Itachi then dominates this whole matchup, if we're being honest here, between the exploding clones, him using crows for his shadow possession jutsu and shadow clones, which the data books and the Itachi story Daylight reveals that when Itachi uses those crows, he's using a lot less chakra than normal, and most versions of Itachi, they are amped up by the Mangekyo Sharingan Genjutsu, and then later on he has his special Mangekyo Sharingan move, the Tsukiyomi. It's not even close here because he has multiple ways to get someone under Genjutsu that don't require eyesight. Tsukiyomi is just overkill. Even if Hiruzen is in the fight and Itachi decides, I'm going to give myself a handicap, I'm not going to use Genjutsu, most versions of Hiruzen are absolutely washed the moment that Itachi does use the Mangekyo, because Mangekyo Sharingan directly boosts the stats of the user to increase their chakra output, which can then be used to boost up their stats. It's stated in the novels and it's implied in the manga, with us seeing multiple times that say Sasuke's chakra levels to increase, like we see when he fights Danzo and he uses the Mangekyo, when he fights against Raikage A, in response to seeing the Mangekyo Sharingan be activated, all of a sudden he's like, oh wait a second, and he goes version 2 cloak in order to match Sasuke's intensity, and then when Sasuke is using this Eternal Mangekyo Sharingan, there's a boost in power. We see it when they're fighting against Jubi Obito, and we see it when he fights against Blind Madara. There are a lot more examples of this being the case between the Mangekyo and the Eternal Mangekyo Sharingan, where there's a power amp by the users, but we'll save that for the future updated Kekkei Genkai handbook video that I'm going to do on the Mangekyo Sharingan later. And speaking of the Mangekyo Sharingan, Hiruzen has no counter to being able to do anything to Matarasu. Itachi can just burn the guy alive. Even if Hiruzen uses Genjutsu, he just gets that automatically reversed onto him. Doesn't matter what Genjutsu Hiruzen uses. So since he knows all the jutsu that were non-Kekkei Genkai in the village, which even if you use the Genjutsu that the Edo Tensei Hokage used in part 1 on Hiruzen where it blinded him, Sharingan automatically sees the Genjutsu, so it's null and void. So the Yata Mirror is another one that has more advantages for Itachi, because the Yata Mirror automatically changes the chakra nature to the exact opposite of whatever Genjutsu attack is being used in order to negate it. So it doesn't matter that Hiruzen has a chakra nature advantage over Itachi, because he's got 5 chakra natures and Itachi has 3. The Yata Mirror just evens the playing field. It really just gives Itachi more of an edge. As previously stated, Tsukiyomi at its max, it can kill the target. Classic example being how Itachi does what the manga tells us in volume 43, where it's Itachi who kills Izumi, which is a reminder, the anime in episode 455 changes that to Obito doing it, which that never happens, contradicts the manga. Itachi is in what is stated in that Itachi story of Midnight to have placed her under a Tsukiyomi Genjutsu in a picosecond. In order to explain how fast a picosecond is, I want you to sit down for a second. So a picosecond is 1/100th of 1/1000th of 1/1 millionth of a second. During that time, Itachi is able to make Izumi go through a genjutsu that is so complex, she lives out 80 years of her life in the genjutsu as Itachi's wife, the mother of her children. She dies in their bedroom, holding Itachi's hands, surrounded by their children. And when she dies in the genjutsu, it is so advanced that her literal mind in the real world, it shuts itself off as she's crying tears of joy, and it tells her body to just die because of how advanced it is. In a picosecond, he does all this. Even if Itachi says, I'm not gonna do elder abuse, and he holds back like he did against Kakashi and Sasuke, Hiruzen would just be in a coma and he would never wake up until Tsunade heals him. If you want to take off some points for Prime Hiruzen by saying that Itachi, despite the strength disadvantage, might be able to catch him off guard with Tsukiyomi, I'm not going to argue against you because Itachi does have a diverse enough bag of ninjutsu in order to pull off getting him under that genjutsu, but that would be his primary win condition against Prime Hiruzen. And as we discussed, Itachi only needs a picosecond to pull it off according to the official source material. So if you're a Prime Hiruzen fan, you got to ask yourself, does this guy have the combat speed that high? If you say yes, then hey, you got a chance at making the argument. If you say no, then Itachi absolutely ruins him. The same when it comes to the Tosca blade. Itachi can bust that thing out pretty quickly. So there are two win conditions that Itachi has even against Prime Hiruzen. But again, I personally don't think that he beats Prime Hiruzen, but I'm giving both sides of the argument a bit of a objective breakdown to allow you to come to that conclusion. Again, I think most versions of Itachi absolutely bully Hiruzen, but I'm curious to know what you guys think. Down in the comment section, leave me your suggestion for the next verses you want to see me do. By the time you guys are seeing this, I'll probably already have 3 or 4 verses videos already done, but feel free to leave the suggestions over here on the left. You can take a look at the other verses videos we've done here on the channel, or over here on the right, you can check out my Anime Explained channel if you want some more non-Naruto content.